In less than 60 seconds, Kofi went from a man praying for a miracle to a man screaming in a nightmare. The brown, churning water of the lagoon had swallowed the streets of Lagos, and now it was pulling at the three things that defined his existence. To his left, his wife Amina, the woman who had stayed by his side when he had nothing, her fingers slipping from a rusted street sign. To his right, his mother Ngozi, the woman who had sacrificed her entire life to give him a future, her hair tangled in a floating thorn bush, choking on water. And wrapped around his waist, a military-grade duffel bag containing $90 million in vacuum-sealed USD, the literal answer to every prayer he had ever whispered to the heavens. Kofi's muscles screamed. The water was chest-high and rising fast. His mother begged him to save his wife. His wife screamed for him to save his mother, but the weight of the muddy was pulling him under. He had seconds, not minutes, seconds. Kofi took one breath, made a calculation that would haunt him forever, and did something that shocked everyone who thought they knew him. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this is the story of the toughest decision of every man on earth. Kofi stood outside his landlord's door, rehearsing the words in his head. Just one more week, I promise. He'd said those words so many times they'd lost their meaning. The door opened. The landlord didn't even let him finish. Kofi, I've been patient, too patient. You have 7 days. After that, I'm changing the locks. 7 days. Kofi nodded and walked away, swallowing the shame that had become his daily meal. He was 34 years old and had failed at everything that mattered. 3 businesses collapsed. The first because his partner stole the capital. The second because the government demolished their shop without warning. The third because nobody wants to buy from a man who looks defeated. Now he worked construction. When there was work, when the rain didn't shut down the sites. His wife Amina was 6 months pregnant. The baby was coming whether they were ready or not. That evening, Kofi came home to find Amina sitting in the dark, hand on her stomach. "Delights?" he asked. "They cut them this morning," she said quietly. "I forgot to pay." Kofi set down his bag, sat beside her. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Amina placed his hand on her belly. The baby kicked. "She's strong," Amina said. "Feel that? She doesn't care that we're broke. She's coming anyway." "She deserves better than this." "She deserves you," Amina said firmly. "Not your money, you." Kofi wanted to believe that, but belief doesn't pay for hospital bills. The next morning, his mother called. "Kofi, I need to tell you something." Her voice was wrong, too careful, too soft. "What is it, Mama?" "The doctor says it's cataracts, both eyes. If I don't get surgery soon, I'll go blind." Kofi's chest tightened. "How much?" 200,000 naira, but don't worry about it. I'll find it, Mama." "Kofi, you have a baby coming. I said I'll find it." He hung up before she could hear his voice break. Kofi's mother Ngozi had raised him alone. His father died when he was 7. Drowned, actually. Tried to save someone else during a flood and never came back up. "Your father was a hero," his mother used to say. "He chose someone else's life over his own." Kofi never understood if that was supposed to be a lesson or a warning. Ngozi had worked 3 jobs to send him to secondary school. Sold vegetables, washed clothes, cleaned houses for people who looked through her like she was invisible. She never complained, never remarried, never stopped sacrificing. And now she was going blind, because Kofi couldn't save her. That night, Kofi stared at the ceiling while Amina slept. He did the math in his head for the 1,000th time. 7 days until eviction, 200,000 for his mother's surgery, hospital deposit for Amina's delivery, food, transport, electricity, water. The numbers didn't work. They never worked. He closed his eyes and prayed. "God, if you're listening, I need a miracle. I need a way out." He didn't know that God was about to answer in the worst way possible.
2 days before the flood, something strange happened. Kofi picked up a passenger at the motor park. He'd been driving Okada, motorcycle taxi, on his off days. Every little bit helped. The man was foreign, expensive suit, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. "Victoria Island," the man said. "Fast, I'll pay double." Kofi drove fast. The man kept checking his phone, looking over his shoulder, breathing like someone who'd been running. At a red light, Kofi glanced back. The man was clutching a large military-style duffel bag, dark green, heavy, waterproof. "You okay, sir?" Kofi asked. "Just drive." When they reached Victoria Island, the man pulled out a thick wad of cash. "Keep going, to the port." "The port, sir? That's restricted." "I know where it is. Drive." Kofi drove. His instincts screamed that something was wrong, but wrong paid double, and he needed double. At the port gates, the man jumped off, dragging the duffel bag. "You didn't see me," the man said, shoving money into Kofi's hand. "You never picked me up." He disappeared into the shadows. Kofi counted the money. 10,000 naira for a 15-minute ride. He should have been grateful. Instead, he felt cold. That night, the news showed a massive police raid at Tin Can Port. Authorities seized over $200 million in drug money tonight after a months-long investigation. 3 suspects were arrested. 1 escaped with an estimated $90 million. They showed a photo. The man from Kofi's Okada. Kofi turned off the TV and said nothing to Amina. What could he say? I might have helped a drug dealer escape? He'd done nothing wrong, technically. But guilt doesn't care about technicalities. The next day, dark clouds rolled over Lagos. The rain started at 4 p.m. Not the usual Lagos rain that comes and goes. This was biblical, angry, personal. By 6 p.m., the streets were rivers. By 7 p.m., the rivers were becoming floods. Kofi stood at the window watching the water rise. "We need to go," Amina said, fear in her voice. "Where? It's the same everywhere." "Your mother. I already called her. She's staying with her neighbor on the 2nd floor." "Kofi, the water's coming inside." He looked down. She was right. Brown water was seeping under the door. "Pack what you can carry. We're going to higher ground." They grabbed documents, clothes, Amina's hospital papers. By the time they opened the door, the water was knee-deep. The street was chaos, people screaming, children crying, cars floating. "Hold my hand," Kofi shouted. "Don't let go." They waded through the current. It was stronger than it looked, pulling, hungry. "Where are we going?" Amina screamed. "The main road, it's higher." But the main road was flooding too. Nothing was safe. Then Kofi heard it. "Help! Kofi, help!" His mother's voice. He turned, saw her in the water 50 meters away, clinging to a fence. "Mama! The building collapsed. I can't hold on." Kofi looked at Amina, at his mother, at the distance between them. "Stay here, Amina," Kofi told her. "Hold on to this pole." "Kofi, no!" But he was already moving. The current fought him with every step. He grabbed his mother just as her grip failed. "I've got you, Mama. I've got you." She clung to him, sobbing. When he turned back, Amina was still there, holding the pole. But the water was rising faster now. "We need to move," Kofi shouted. "All of us, together." They formed a chain. Kofi in front, his mother in the middle, Amina behind. They moved as one unit towards anything that looked stable. That's when it hit him. The duffel bag. It came out of nowhere, carried by the surge, and slammed Kofi's chest with brutal force. He grabbed it instinctively to keep from being knocked over. It was heavy, impossibly heavy. The zipper was partially open, and inside, Kofi saw vacuum-sealed bricks of cash, American dollars, hundreds, thousands of them. His brain short-circuited. This was the bag, the man's bag, the $90 million. "Kofi, move!" Amina screamed. But he couldn't move. He was holding $90 million. Everything he'd ever prayed for in his hands. "Kofi!" His mother's voice snapped him back. A wave was coming, massive, generated by something collapsing upstream. "Hold on," Kofi screamed. The wave hit. Everything exploded into chaos. When Kofi surfaced gasping, the world had changed. He was wedged between a submerged car and a crumbling concrete wall. The duffel bag was still tangled around his waist, belt loops caught in the straps. To his left, 5 feet away, Amina clung to a street sign that was bending under the pressure. To his right, 5 feet away, his mother's hair was tangled in a floating thorn bush, her face barely above water. Both women were screaming his name. "Kofi, help! Son, please!" Kofi tried to move toward Amina. The weight of the bag pulled him back. He tried to move toward his mother. The bag dragged him down. He couldn't reach both. And he couldn't swim with $90 million tied to his waist. "Kofi!" Amina's voice cracked with terror. "The side is breaking!" "Save your wife, my son!" His mother choked on water. "Save the child!" Kofi's mind raced through calculations. If he cut the bag loose, he could save them both. But $90 million doesn't float away twice. If he saved one woman, the other would drown. If he tried to save both, all 3 of them would die. Amina's street sign cracked with a metallic groan. His mother went under, came back up, gasping. Seconds. He had seconds. "I'm sorry," Kofi whispered. Then he did something that shocked both women. Kofi didn't swim toward his mother. Kofi didn't swim toward his wife. He took the deepest breath of his life and dove straight down, disappeared completely beneath the churning brown water. "Kofi!" Amina screamed. "Kofi!" "No, my son, no!" His mother's voice broke. Both women thought he'd drowned, thought he'd given up, thought the weight of the money had pulled him under for good. 10 seconds passed. 15. 20. Then Kofi exploded back to the surface, gasping, coughing, hands completely empty. "The money!" Amina sobbed. "Kofi, you had it! You had the bag!" Kofi didn't answer. He grabbed his mother first, using every bit of strength he had left, flinging her onto the roof of the submerged car. Then he lunged for Amina just as the street sign snapped and crashed into the water. He dragged them both to the highest point of a concrete wall. All 3 of them collapsed, coughing, sobbing, shaking. "You saved us, my son," Mama Nyogzi gasped between breaths. "You chose us." "You let the money go," Amina said, staring at him with tears streaming down her face. "You could have been rich. You could have had everything." Kofi said nothing. He just stared at the water below them. His expression was blank, terrifying, empty, like a man who'd made a calculation he'd never speak about. His mother touched his face. "Kofi, are you okay?" He blinked, looked at her, forced a smile. "We're alive. That's all that matters." But something in his eyes made Amina's blood run cold, because the man who'd gone underwater wasn't the same man who'd come back up. 1 week later. The water had receded, leaving Lagos looking like a graveyard of mud. Kofi, Amina, and Mama Ngozi were living in a displacement camp at the National Stadium. Thousands of people, mattresses on concrete floors, the smell of wet clothes and unwashed bodies. They were alive, but they were starving. The government distributed 1 meal a day, rice and beans, never enough. Kofi's mother had developed a cough that wouldn't stop. Amina's pregnancy was causing her pain, but there was no proper medical care. They had nothing. No money, no home, no future. Just survival. One evening, Kofi stood up from his mat. "Where are you going?" Amina asked. "Just walking. Need some air." "Be careful." He nodded and left. Kofi walked through the devastated streets of his old neighborhood. Most people hadn't returned yet. Too dangerous, too destroyed. The mud was thick, sucking at his boots with every step. He walked to the edge of the lagoon where the water had originally breached, stood there for a long moment, staring at a specific, unremarkable tree. Then he knelt down in the mud and began to dig. His hands moved with purpose, like someone who knew exactly what they were looking for. 3 feet down, his fingers touched something. Plastic wrapping. He pulled it out carefully. A small bundle, vacuum-sealed, clean despite the mud around it. Not the entire duffel bag, Just one brick of cash. He unwrapped it slowly. American $100 bills. Crisp. Perfect. $100,000. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he wrapped it back in plastic and slipped it inside his shirt. The memory came back unbidden. Those 20 seconds underwater, the moment everyone thought he'd drowned. But he hadn't been drowning. He'd been calculating, his hands working frantically in the murky water, finding the drainage pipe, shoving the duffel bag deep inside, wedging it behind rebar, making sure it would stay hidden when the water settled. 20 seconds. That's how long it took to hide $90 million. 20 seconds where his wife and mother thought he'd given up, thought he'd died, thought they were next. He'd risked all 3 of their lives for those 20 seconds. Not because he was choosing the money over them, because he'd realized something in that moment of pure clarity. A poor man who survives a flood with $90 million is a thief. He's hunted. He's questioned. He's dead within a week. But a poor man who survives with nothing? He's a survivor. He's pitied. He's invisible. Nobody suspects the man who lost everything. Kofi stood up, brushing mud from his clothes. The brick of cash pressed against his chest. Heavy, warm, real. He started walking back toward the camp, back to his starving mother and suspicious wife. Back to the role he'd been playing for 7 days. The grateful survivor, the lucky man, the hero who chose family over fortune. But beneath the mud, $90 million waited, hidden, patient, his. And somewhere in Lagos, the people who wanted it back were already looking. The drug dealers who'd lost their shipment, the police who were still investigating, the desperate survivors who'd heard rumors of money floating in the flood. The water was gone, but the sharks? They were just arriving, and Kofi had just painted a target on his back the size of $90 million. He didn't know it yet, but choosing to hide that money wouldn't save him. It would destroy everything.
Kofi is a hero in their eyes, but look at his face. That isn't the look of a man who saved his family. That's the look of a man who just began a life sentence in a prison no one can see. He thinks he's safe. He thinks the secret is buried in the silt, but the owners of that bag are already counting the missing bricks. Was he right to risk their lives for the money? Or did he just sign their death warrants? The story doesn't end here. The sharks are coming. Comment part 2 right now if you're ready to see the cost of the secret. Subscribe to The Tales Teller so you don't miss the moment the dirt starts to speak.